Most of the time here on Ag PhD, we talk about resistant broadleaves. In other words, broadleaves that are able to tolerate herbicides like the ALS products or Roundup, something like that. Well, today we've got a tough perennial weed that unfortunately also happens to be resistant to certain chemistry now. It's Johnsongrass.
Well, Johnsongrass is one of those weeds I'm really thankful that we don't have it on our farm yet because, as Brian mentioned, it's a perennial with rhizomes. So anytime you've got that, it's going to be difficult because you need a product that will get down into that root system that can move through the rhizomes and deliver a lethal dose to every growing point. There aren't very many products that do that. One that will is Roundup. Now, Roundup has been very effective on controlling grasses, and it's also very effective at controlling perennials if you use a high enough rate. If you're using a pint of Roundup, clearly if you've got an established patch of Johnsongrass or any perennial weed, you're gonna have a tough time moving to every growing point with a lethal dose.
All right, but what happens if your Johnsongrass happens to be resistant to Roundup? Now, let's first talk about the difference between tolerance and resistance. When something's tolerant, simply using a higher rate or more concentrated droplets will kill it. And in some cases, that's what I've seen with Johnsongrass. People tell me it's resistant, but you know what? If I went out there with a crazy, ridiculously high rate of Roundup, of course I never want to be off label, all right? But I want to use the highest possible Roundup rate labeled, and I want to use the lowest possible water rate. If I do that, well then all of a sudden I'm getting control. So I don't look at that as resistance. Now, if you are doing that and you're still not getting that weed under control, even if you sprayed the best conditions, you use smaller spray droplets, all these things, and it's still not working, well now you got to go to plan B. And what's plan B, Darren? Because I don't have a real great answer.
Pre-emerge herbicides don't always work very well on perennial weeds. They work pretty good on the annual weeds, but perennials can be tough. So when you've got a perennial like that, I really look at what do you have for options post-emerge. Now, most of the post-emerge grass killers for wheat, for example, are in the group 1 or group 2 category. Well, with group 1 or group 2, which ones are going to be effective? If we've got resistance to the ALS family or the ACCase family, now we're all of a sudden down to one mode of action. So that's what makes it really tough to try and control something like Johnsongrass. In a burn down, gramoxone has been highly effective still. That may be something that you turn to before you even seed the crop.
Yep, and then when we start talking corn and soybeans, I look at Liberty. If you have Liberty tolerant crops, that absolutely can work. There certainly are other grass killers out there too. But again, this is a tough perennial weed. It's going to take multiple applications unless Roundup is still working for you on your farm.
That's all the time we have for this week's Weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.